This is what remains of my personal rig after my recent 5950X3D upgrade. The X570 Unify motherboard, 64GB of really good DDR4 low latency 3600 Mbps RAM, and the 5950X. Now, what I really didn't know at the time of recording was that my 5950X is about to die. The original plan was to use that 16-core processor in conjunction with the MSI B550 gaming motherboard and build a new PC. The X570 Unify is just a tad bit overkill, and unlike my personal rig, I can't justify putting it on the bill of materials for nearly 200 quid because, well, that's what it's worth. The B550 motherboard will do just as well, and the cost is closer to £90, so about half for what amounts to, well, the same performance. Yes, the X570 has more features, yes, it has a better VRM, better for overclocking, yes, it has more expansion, better debug features, etc, but at the end of the day, for an average user, all of that means absolutely nothing, as it doesn't really improve the performance at all. Also, the reason you're seeing me swapping the 5950X into an X370 motherboard was because, well, I was curious. The chip died, so I did not get to finish that video, so sadly all I can say is I managed to throttle the VRM on that board and, well, leave it at that. As I had to RMA the 5950X and I got a brand new chip, I decided to sell it sealed as it was a bit too much for this 3060 Ti Gaming X that I am planning on using today. The footage you're seeing now is from when I took the PC off the test bench and I started the actual build. The CPU lurking under there is a much more reasonable 5600X that pairs incredibly well with the 3060 Ti. Not to mention it is less than a third of the cost of the 16-core chip. For today, I have a rather high-end NZXT case that has a dedicated AIO mounting plate, so that is what you are seeing here, me installing the radiator on that. On the one hand, I really wanted this build to have RGB because MSI has a very decent control scheme with their Aura Sync, but on the other, I really wanted to have the Corsair fans in the mix as they have much higher static pressures. So what I did is I set this all up in a push-pull configuration. I picked up this H100i 240mm AIO a little while ago alongside the PSU I'll be using today, and for the first time I did not need to do a service on it because it cools absolutely fine without any issues. The chap I got it from did tell me it's been sitting in a closet for quite a long time, and I can believe it. Most H100i's and even H110i's usually need to be stripped down and cleaned, but not this one. And this is what it looks like in the case. The non-RGB Corsair fans are completely hidden away and you won't know they are there unless you pop open the back panel. Now the B550 motherboard with the 5600X and 32GB of ballistics 3600 CL16 RAM go in, and I get to fumbling about with the paste because it leaks some silicone oil and it's way too viscous. On a side note, I can guarantee that the performance is still 100% okay. But while I'm doing that, I should tell you that I also pre-installed a 1TB Samsung A50 SATA SSD and a 500GB hard drive alongside the 750W Cooler Master PSU. And I also connected the CPU pump directly to 12V SATA in order to avoid any current draw issues for the motherboard, and added the USB connection to be able to control through iQ. Unfortunately, the only cable I had left was white, but by the time I was done, for some reason I didn't dislike it anymore and chose to keep it in. And finally, the 3060 Ti GPU. And if you are looking at it and wondering what the heck is that ugly bracket on top, well, it was missing a trim piece, so I decided to fasten a replacement for a shield, thinking that I would use the 2 screws and 3D print a support bracket if necessary. And so it's a lot sturdier than the original, so there really was no need. And as a shameless plug, I will have the repaste and pad video for this card on the channel soon, so you might want to consider subscribing if you are interested in that. Reason being, this is the first card that reports both hotspot and edge temperature where I managed to get the delta below 10°C. It really runs exceptionally well. To toot my own horn too much, but this is a bit better compared to what you would expect from stock. It did take some doing, plus some expensive pads to make that happen though. And that's it for this build. Let's have a look at some pictures and I shall see you in the benchmarking section. Starting us off as per usual is heaven, and a couple of seconds in it is clear that this will be an above 250 FPS run with out-of-the-box settings on everything, and indeed it did not disappoint with 262 FPS on average. Picking up the tessellation to extreme nets 216 FPS, but everything looks bloated in this benchmark, so no thank you. The reason I did this check was to pit it against my other 3060 Gaming X Trio and that I benchmarked a couple of months ago, and it was, well, identical. This is where I would say the superposition is up next, but clearly it's not. Seems like the launcher is incompatible with the latest version of Windows, so until they fix that, here's the 3D Mark Speedway instead. This is the latest benchmark in the 3D Mark suite, and it looks fantastic, leveraging all the brand new APIs and rendering tech. Essentially the anti-heaven. Hell? Is it? As I only use 3D Mark for stability testing, I will let you be the judge if this score is good or not. What I do know is that it passed every single stability test I threw at it with over 99.5% score, and the minimum is 97, so hey ho, it works. Rocket League runs with over 500 FPS on average. I really don't have anything else to add here, so enjoy the background music for a bit. Finally, Fortnite got a proper update, and now Nanite and Lumen are so much better supported. At least I think they are, because I went off on the same walnut world I always choose, and immediately my gaze was drawn to the ray trace-like appearance of the light. I'm gonna lie, I like it, and I bet this will look amazing on an HDR monitor, but my problem is I have such apathy for Fortnite I can't be asked to install it on my main machine to oogle at lights. But how does it run? Well, if the frame rate and time graph are any indications, absolutely amazing with 126 FPS on average and incredibly smooth frame times. Horizon Zero Dawn ran great with a small caveat. Yes, it posted 139 FPS on average, which is really good, but I'm willing to bet my main GPU that if I swap this 5600X with a 5800X 3D, the score will go up by 20% at least. This isn't bottlenecking in the stuttery sense of the word at all, it's buttery smooth, but I do feel that the GPU is being held back just a smidge. In control with everything turned all the way up, for the first time I am conflicted. The game runs with about 120 FPS at 1080p with DLSS on and all the RTX options, render resolution being 720p. But turning off DLSS and setting the render resolution to 1080p drops it to 68 FPS on average, which is still a lot, so I connected my 4K monitor and presto, 4K with DLSS at 67 FPS. The extra kick of real pixels just made the perceived softness go away, which is really nice actually. Days Gone with very high settings in the opening chase scene held steady at 120 FPS on average. It's getting a bit long in the tooth this game, but it still looks really good to me. I'm torn between keeping it in the benchmark roster or changing it for Hogwarts Legacy. I'm now thinking about setting a proper 2TB image drive for all my testing, so it's the best time to do it. Assassin's Creed Valhalla ran with 109 FPS with no resolution modifying tech. It's very rare that I can get this game over 19 FPS on average due to CPU limitations, which kinda makes the Horizon Zero Dawn result even more puzzling. It just goes to show that the 5600X still has a heck of a lot of chops, even when compared with the newer 12600K, although it will fall behind when the 13th gen comes to the party with the extra 8 efficiency cores. If I was looking to buy brand new, unless heavily discounted, I would go with the Intel offering for the mid-range, even versus the 7600X, but on the secondary market, this 5600X still provides incredible value for money. In Far Cry 6, this time with DXR enabled, we get 92 FPS on average. Yes, the ray tracing's main contribution to this title is dropping the frame rate, but I mean, when you are over 90 anyways in a single player game with great frame times, you might as well go all out. And finally it's time for CD Projekt Red games. Starting with Cyberpunk with RT Ultra, with the only concession being DLSS set to auto. It's one of the few games that I trust DLSS to do its thing on auto without making a mess of the image quality, and with 65 and change FPS on average, I think this is the way to play it. Sure, you can optimize the settings and easily almost double the FPS, but why bother when it is super stable and looks this good? And finally The Witcher 3. Not really looking to benchmark, more of a peek to see if after the latest patch it's playable with everything on Ultra and DLSS set to quality. And the answer is, well, no, it still goes below 30 FPS. But there is some good news, if you can call it that, and now it stays above 30 with DLSS on auto, if just barely. My take on it, still not okay, and CDPR really needs to fix this mess. Just look at Cyberpunk, they can definitely do it. And with that, that's kind of it for this video. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.